Afternoon adventures. That's right. You know what time it is. It's Friday. And we are live here at the Collective. John's Dungeon Corner. 1 p.m. That's right. Here we are. And on air. We can turn it on. It's behind Harley. So welcome to the show. Today we got some very interesting things to talk about. So let's talk about what's going on at the store. Yeah, that's always a good thing, right? All right, so we have a total restock. Everything has been restocked. The miniatures, the Vallejo paints, the Warhammer paints. Big week in Magic. So tons of stuff coming out that's already here. It's going to be crazy. So make sure. Happy Friday, Sarah. Welcome to the show. So that's what we got. A lot of restock, a lot of restock, a lot of restock. Couple new things, but a lot of restock. From miniatures to paints to card games to wow. Okay, so that takes care of that. Of course, dice are important. There's plenty of dice out there too. But today's topic is going to be magic and how it works in Dungeons & Dragons, because people have asked. There's a lot of different magic going on. Dice. No, we talked about dice already. But yes, dice are important. Some very cool dice here. I kind of like the way the old school comes. You know what I do? Well, I get the old school ones, of course, in purple. And I keep the little things and use them as vials for potions. And I put the dice in there and use them to roll them out of. So there's an idea. It's reusable. Don't forget. Good stuff right here. Yeah. I'm going to put it right there. All right. So that's it for dice. Magic. So we've got divine magic and we've got arcane magic. And we got people that use divine magic and we got people that use arcane magic. And we use it in different ways. It's kind of crazy, right? Okay. So we're going to talk about that. And, you know what? Before I do that, let me show you something cool. And then I'm going to bring out today's guest. We have a guest. But anyway, look, these are the spell cards. These are arcane spell cards. I'm not going to grab a bunch of them. I'm going to grab a 9th level one. This looks cool. Let's see what this spell is. Dun, dun, dun. It is wish. Well, let me see. Let me make a wish. I wish that I had Antonio as my co-host today. Let's see. Ta-da! Look at that. The wish spell worked. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, so everyone say, hey, Antonio. You guys all know him. He's a dungeon master here on Wednesdays. He plays, he runs games, he does it all. So he's my son and my co-host today. Every once in a while, I get to bring him out. And today he deigned to stop by and say hello to us. So the wish spell worked really cool. All right. So talking about these cards, these are really nice. Now these cards come from in cantrip all the way up to 9th level. All right, and they come for these are the arcane ones, which are used by they're used by the bard, the sorcerer, the wizard, the warlock, and the eldritch knight. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the eldritch knight. So I'm gonna put them there. And then here we got the bard cards. These are really nice. And they also are used by, these are basically bard specific cards. And I brought another set. These are the cleric cards, which are used by clerics and druids, paladins, rangers. Some are. So a bunch of them. There we go. All kinds of people. And actually, there's even a sorcerer that can use clerical magic, but that's a totally different ball of wax. So we're going to talk about that some other time. But today we're going to talk about magic, Antonio. So before we get into that, though, let me back up because somebody had sat there and texted me and I guess I confused them when we were talking about the skill sets. Okay, so here we go. When I said that anybody can use any skill, that is very true. Anyone can use a skill. Everybody has the ability to use them. Let me put it that way. But not everybody is proficient in every skill. And what I was talking about is in order to make the rogue's ability to pick locks and that, someone who is not proficient in picking locks. In other words, what is that? What's that skill with the fingers?
Sleight of hand.
Sleight of hand. Thank you. The sleight of hand skill, then they would be at a disadvantage because, they don't know how to really use the tools in that. That's something that I do. some DMs do it differently. That's just something. It doesn't say that in the book anywhere. They were looking for it and they said, well, I can't find it. Well, that's just something that I do because, yes, you can use a skill. Well, that's like I can go drive a forklift. Or no, I can go drive one of those big cranes, right, that demolish buildings and stuff. I've never done it, but I can do it. I can just get back there and start. And that's like having a skill. But to be proficient in it, I know how to swing that ball, how to turn that crane, and do all kinds. That makes it proficient. So God knows what's going to happen when I get a wrecking ball and start swinging it all over the place, right? Oh, good grief. Don't be in the building next door. That's what I'm telling you. So, okay, so that I wanted to clarify that. That's just something that I do. And I think that guy kind of crossed over into, oh, that's the way it's done. No. I think, Tony, you do that too, don't you, with some skills?
Depends on the skill.
Okay, so okay, that's good. So it depends on the skill. Let's talk about this real quick. Then we're going to talk about magic. So it depends on the skill. Elaborate.
So I run a sci-fi campaign, and in that campaign there are 2 extra skills, data and technology, and they're meant as ways of interacting with, like a computer and hacking it versus being able to then take that data and then hack it, or being able to use some foreign technology. Depending on what you're trying to use the skill for would determine for me whether or not you'd be at disadvantage rolling or something like that. For instance, if you're on an elevator trying to remove the panel and get it to do certain things, if you're not proficient in it, you're going to have a tough time trying to figure it out.
We're back to the whole wrecking ball thing.
You're going to have a tough time, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Because you're not going to know necessarily typically where that wire would ground to, or know that if you take this and try and get it to do a different function, then you might accidentally cross the wires and
do the complete opposite of what you said of going up. You're going down really fast.
Whereas someone who's proficient in at least the general idea of technology would have an easier time.
Right. So there you go. So use that. I mean, that's just something. And like he said, in these specific instances. Now, if somebody wanted to try sleight of hand and they wanted to just kind of maybe flip a page over on a journal or something that someone's looking at while they look away, just make a roll. That's not really something that would be, oh my gosh. But once you start tinkering with locks and stuff, that's a little bit more complicated. Can anybody do it? Yes. Can they do it well? No. All right. So I can tell you that from experience, but we're not going to get into it right now. And yes, sir, that does sound oddly familiar. Dun, dun, dun. All right. So now on to the subject of magic. All right. So, Tony, we know there's all kinds of magic and all kinds of people casting magic, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, hey, what is it? I think I mentioned him. The Eldritch Fighter is real. The Eldritch Knight is actually a fighter.
Subclass of the fighter, yeah.
Hey, brother Antonio, great combo. Hey, Willie, how are you? Welcome to the show. Knock, knock. Who's there? Got to follow along with this. This is what happens on my show. It's interactive. What are you going to do? We can get phone calls. No, it's not for the show. Well, maybe. You never know. We should start a show hotline. Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Be interesting. Oh,
Sarah, who's there? Great. I'm going to have to go get the beholder, right? And let them answer the door. All right, we'll come back to Mr. Knock Knock there. Okay, now, so there's a lot of magic. The Eldritch Knight, which is a fighter who decides to go down that path and cast some magic, gets arcane magic later on. And there's other classes that actually do that, the Paladin, the Ranger, right?
Yeah, the difference is that it's no matter what subclass of the Paladin and Ranger you get magic.
Right, oh, that's true. Right, that's a good point. That's a very good point. The class itself is designed to get magic, whereas with the fighter, it's only
the rogue, as an arcane trickster, would get magic also.
There we go. Oh, there you go. So see, there's classes that the fighter and the Paladin and the Ranger get them because of their class. Aim who? This is the way the show works. Knock knock. Who's there? Aim who? A mimic. Roll for initiative. All right. Yeah. Good grief. All right. This is what happens when you have an interactive show, but I love it. All right. So, and then Antonio brought up that depending on the path that you take later on, there's 2 classes, the fighter and the rogue that gets it as we go. So now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this.
Oh, an artificer is just like a paladin and ranger, though.
The artificer, okay, the artificer. Can't forget that one. That's actually a pretty popular class. If you don't know about it, look it up in the book. Antonio taking over left. Yes, hey, he knows these things. That's why I bring experts sometimes out here. You don't know it, but I do. Antonio's developed into one heck of a dungeon master. You know, it's like last one for today. Knock knock. Okay, who's there? This is what happens. I'm telling you. You see how my show goes now, right? 44. 44 who?
44?
44 psychic damage from this bad joke. Okay. I love it. Hey, it's all in fun. I love it all. Interactive, you know. All right, so meat and potatoes, right. So let's talk about, I'm going to talk about the difference between the wizard and the sorcerer real quick. Then I'm going to turn over the warlock to Antonio because he's played it really well and kind of knows the ins and outs of it, because that's unique among the spell classes. That would have to be the most unique of them.
I would definitely say.
So let me explain this first. So when he talks to you about it, it makes sense. All right. So we have the sorcerer and we have a wizard. Both cast arcane magic. Both pretty much use the same spells. Difference is that the wizard has his spells all locked up in a spell book. All right. And he can have every spell book, every spell in the game in that spell book eventually. Well, maybe not in that one, but in several books. All right. And every night he'll open up the page to whatever spell he wants to learn, and he'll memorize that spell. And for every spell slot that he has, now let's just take a first level character. All right. Let's make it nice and simple. First level character gets 3 first level spells, 2 first level spells.
I believe 2.
I can't.
Just like the
yeah,
bard.
two first level spells. Unlimited amount of cantrips. Let's go to the wizard real quick. So we're let me put my glasses on so I can see what I'm not looking at. Right, that looked like a 3.
So 2.
2. Okay, so 2, and he knows 3 cantrips now. So out of the cantrip list, the wizard's gonna go. I'm gonna use this. I know this one, and this one. So out of those 3, he can use them higher because we can use unlimited cantrips daily. In the magic, he knows. I think it's up to, depending on his level plus his intelligence. So he knows 5. Let's say at 5 at most. He has 5 spells that he knows. It's in there. Yeah, it's first level. It's your level plus your modifier. So let's say he has an 18 intelligence. Oh, we're going to talk about that too. That's
so intelligence modifier plus the level.
Yeah, so 5. He will know 5 spells in his spell book, first level spells. Now, so he'll go through there and he'll go, let's say, just for easiness, magic missile, detect, identify. Let's see. Your magic glasses, once you put them on, you get the ability to read small print. Wow. Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, boy. I even got helpers. Let's go through. I want to make sure I do this right because, all right, so I'm going to choose, my 5 spells are going to be, there we are. Of course, I'm going to use the bardic ones because I keep looking at the bard. All right, here we go. We're going to use Burning Hands, Magic Missile, Find Familiar, Identify, and Witch Bolt. Okay, that's what we're going to use. So tonight, hey, Donna, welcome to the show. All right, so tonight I can only cast 2 spells. So I have these 2 slots. If you can imagine, I have these 2 slots. Here they are. These are my 2 slots for tomorrow. I'm going to learn Witch Bolt as my attack spell just in case we get in trouble, because it's a really nifty spell to get us out of trouble, right? And then this one, I'm going to sit there and memorize Magic Missile because, well, it's my best buddy. It never misses. 3d4 plus 1 per missile, right? And it never misses.
Okay. 1d4 plus 1 per missile.
Sorry, 1d4, 3 1d4 missiles
plus 1.
Plus 1. All right, so it's 1d4 plus 1 3 times. But this one never misses, and this is my backup just in case everything goes sideways. Witch Bolt's really neat because you roll a hit, and once you hit, as long as you can see the creature, it automatically hits.
So it also has to be within 30 feet, and you have to take your action to continue.
Okay, see, I was all motivated. That's why I bring them. I get all motivated. Yes, you have to take your action. You can't cast another spell, which we're going to talk about concentration and all that stuff here, because that has to do with concentrating on a spell.
And it actually says that in the spell.
Yep. See, there you go. All right. So he's got that down to a science, doesn't he? Wow. All right, but I like it. That's why I brought him on the show. So that's the way wizard magic works. Now, and tonight when I rest and it's my 8-hour rest, I go, you know what? I didn't really use Witch Bolt. I need my Identify because we found these magical items. Okay, so now I'm going to sit down. I'm still going to take my Magic Missile because that's my buddy. But I'm going to take Identify because tomorrow I'm going to, when we get done, I'm going to identify this one item that looks really cool. Antonio's like a D&D encyclopedia. He really is. All right, so that's the wizard. Now, the sorcerer is unique, right? Because the sorcerer.
I'd actually like to add one more thing about
the
wizard. So wizards, unlike sorcerers, if I remember correctly, can do ritual magic.
You pass it right there. Yep. Ritual?
Yeah, they can cast rituals.
Oh, that's right.
So the sorcerer is unable to do ritual magic, which means spells like Find Familiar, which is a ritual spell, means that they don't spend a slot to cast that spell. So they can then spend the 10 minutes plus the casting time of the spell to do that spell and cast it without spending a spell slot.
That's true. I forgot
and
about
that's important because that's a key feature that the wizards also get.
Right. Man,
because
that's right.
They can just do that.
That's true. And then now the sorcerer. Okay, now let's go to the sorcerer. The sorcerer is unique in that eventually he ends up getting more spells that he can cast than the wizard. Okay, not by a lot.
They get the same amount.
That's interesting. They used to.
It's because he doesn't have to prepare.
Right. That's what we changed. That's right.
And they get sorcery points.
That's what it is. Okay, we're going to get into some deep stuff here. Now, here's where the sorcerers get kind of crazy. One, they don't have a spell book. All right. One day they woke up and they just know how to do magic. That's the best way to put it. It's a part of them. It's unique to them. And they know X amount of spells. Here's the difference. Whereas the sorcerer has books and tomes and can learn every magical spell there is, sorcerers are limited to X number of spells that they know. And that's it. Now, as they become more proficient, i.e. go up levels, they can change out some of the spells that they know. All right? That they can do. But here's the neat thing about them. Okay, so I know, let's see how many spells do I know at first level. I still only know 2 spells. Here's a cool thing. I'm going to memorize the same spells. I think they're cool. Magic Missile, right? And my Witch Bolt. Now, here's the difference. I have 2 spell slots. I get into trouble. I cast. I'm like, oh, man, we need this. We're fighting a really tough orc. Boom, Witch Bolt. I hit him. Blah, 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 blah. He goes down. Later on, we're traveling through, and all of a sudden we encounter an ogre, and I'm like, the witch is going to go, oh, my God. All I got left is Magic Missile. The sorcerer's going to go, well, I got another spell slot, and I know Witch Bolt. Witch Bolt. He just chooses the magic that he wants. So as he goes up in levels, you can see they're very more versatile, much more versatile. They're like the on-the-spot versatile spellcaster. Whereas the wizard has to kind of plan out his day. Okay, I got these. And the more spells you get, the harder it gets. Once you get up to like 5th level and you got all these spells you got to plan out for the day. Whereas the sorcerer is going to go, I got this many. Okay, these are the spells I know. Great. And that's it. All right. There's your balance. Now, sorcerers also have really neat abilities where they get the spell, the sorcerer, font of magic, and wow, do I really want to get into all that?
So basically, they have the ability to. So they lose the ritual casting. They lose the ability to know all spells at all times and be able to switch it as they need, as they decide to prepare. They get the ability to be a little bit more flexible in how they do things because they get sorcery points, and they get a couple of other features that are more in depth to the sorcerer just class in general.
Right.
Explain they can be more flexible. So, like you were saying, they're much more flexible in what they can do. So, yes, a sorcerer doesn't necessarily have the ability to cast more spells in a day normally. They will eventually get the ability to cast more spells in a day. And yes, Sarah, twinning is one of the feats that they eventually get as a part of the class, which is called metamagic. They get that ability and they can make a spell that would normally hit one target hit multiple targets, or a spell that would normally be a touch spell can now be a distance spell. Stuff like
We're not
that,
gonna
which
get
is
too
more
much
in
into
depth.
that.
Which
Yes.
is much more in depth than we need to go.
We're gonna
But
go later. Later in the year, we're gonna talk about this. Maybe
but
in the
that's
month.
why
right.
they have that. That's why they don't have certain things. Yes, they can eventually technically cast more spells in a day because they have sorcery points, which can be converted to spells.
Right. So that's the way that balances itself out, right? And it's really neat. There's all kinds of things. And as you go deeper into the class, and we're just kind of touching, we're just kind of brush stroking it because this is why players also need to fully read through their character picks. That's actually a good point, Sarah, that I was gonna talk about a little later, but I can talk about it now. When you pick a character, you really have to read your character. And what did I tell you? When you create a character, imagine it at 20th level and work back. Look at what you end up being. Don't worry about right now. Right now is just levels are here and gone the next session. Okay, your first level, then your second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on and so forth. Antonio's grinning because it's taken them a year to sit there and get the second level, but not my fault. No, we only meet so often, and well, anyway, it's a campaign. I tell you, a campaign. We're in no hurry, but they're second level at least. Next session, huh? But anyway, so read where we're at 20th level and then work backwards, and you'll see a sorcerer, and you'll see the difference between it and the wizard. And we're gonna get to the warlock in a second. Let me touch on the bard a second because that's another arcane caster. Hello, my love. Welcome to the show. Oh, you came up there. I missed it. I just kind of went blip, 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 blip. So the bard is unique in that he does use arcane magic. Basically the same way. He memorizes from the day before. I mean, you can enhance it with magic, and he does have magical abilities that he uses through his musical instruments, like inspiration, and later on he can do a healing kind of healing font type of thing. And
He
so
gets healing word at first level.
he gets healing word at first level. So the bard, okay, let me back up. The bard is like a jack of all trades. That's really what they are. Okay. And it's true because at first level they have clerical, divine magic, healing word, which is really neat because you can cast it up to 60 feet away. And he also has spell effects, arcane spell effects that he can use. So that's kind of cool. All right. His spell list is really integrated and very balanced that way. So technically a bard, although he can't fill the shoes of a wizard, and he can't really fill the shoes of a cleric, he can kind of act as a medium between them. All right. So it's kind of cool. In desperation, a bard would do if nobody wants to take a cleric or a wizard or sorcerer. And they have all kinds of cool, inspiring, and other abilities that they get to do. And one of their coolest things has not to do with magic, but with skills that I was telling you about, is that the bard has a special ability that gives them, it's called Jack of all trades, of course, that gives them the ability to put half their level or half their proficiency number into all the skills that are not proficient with. So if he's not proficient with sleight of hand, he would sit there and gain +1 to it at first level. Or at second level, at second level, because it gets that skill at second level. But once again, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. It's just something, one of those little tidbits that I remembered from the bard. Now, so that's really about it with the bard. Here's where it gets a little kind of crazy. We're going to talk about the warlock. And the warlock is unique in a lot of ways, starting from how he gets his magic, right? I'm going to turn it over to Antonio now.
So with the warlock, the main thing is that warlocks don't technically do spells the way everyone else does. So, like I'm sure a lot of people are aware of, they have a patron, a person that imbues them with magic. Depending on who your patron is, depends on certain spells that you get on top of that. So speaking of that, because that is very important to the warlock, if, for example, you took a pact with a fiend, it's your expanded spell list, which means you can have access to these spells that are not normally on the warlock spell list. What it does not mean is that you do not get these spells on top of the other spells you know.
That's good to know. That's a good point.
First level warlock knows 2 spells. He can choose 2 spells from the first level Warlock spell list, or he could take Burning Hands at command if he chose the Fiend.
Because they're normally not on his spell list.
They're not normally on his
on the
spell
character's
list.
spell list, right?
So, like the Great Old One, he could do Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Those are in spells that he can pick from the list. They are not spells that he gets on top of his
Right.
two known spells. And you get your cantrips, and the number one probably cantrip for Warlocks is Eldritch Blast. Right? It's one of those ones that almost every Warlock takes for one reason or another. It's not necessarily has to, but it is a thing that they do. Now, another feature is that they probably cast the least amount of spells at any given point, but it's because the way that their magic works, they are able to then just spend an hour doing nothing, doing a short rest. To use game mechanic terms, they take a short rest, which is 1 hour, and they get their spells back. So I cast one spell this battle, I spend an hour, I can go into the next combat, spend another spell. Spend an hour, do another spell. They have that ability that, technically speaking, they're not just limited to those amount of spells every long rest. No, every hour, if you take an hour break in between every time you cast a spell, you can use that spell over and over and over. So that is a really neat thing that they have. Nobody else does that.
Right.
Another feature of theirs is that as you level up, you'll notice on the table that it shows spell level or slot level. What that's telling you is that anytime you cast a first level or higher spell, you will always cast that spell as powerful as you can. So if I was to cast, if I picked a Warlock who had the Patron of a Celestial, he can cast Cure Wounds.
So let's say you're casting it, you're a 5th level character.
So as a 5th level Warlock, you always cast your spells at 3rd level.
Okay.
So that means that I would cast Cure Wounds, even though it's a 1st level spell, as if it was a 3rd level. So I would always, instead of doing the 1d8 for Cure Wounds, I would then do 3d8. Because every time you upcast Cure Wounds, it gives it an extra 1d8.
That's amazing.
So no matter what, he will always cast Cure Wounds at 3rd level.
So the question is, do the Warlocks get Magic Missile?
There might be a way to do it, but I don't believe they get it at 1st level.
My. Could you imagine that at 5th level, you're automatically casting it as a 3rd level? Let's see. I just have to know. I mean, I don't memorize all of these things because there's a lot to memorize. Warlock.
I don't believe they get Magic Missile.
Oh, they don't get Magic Missile. They get
So-
Witch Bolt, though.
Like Witch Bolt. Witch Bolt's one of those spells that a lot of people like because once you hit, you continues to hit.
That's
But
nice.
unlike everybody else, the Warlock will always cast that Witch Bolt at his most powerful.
Right.
So a 5th level Warlock would cast that Witch Bolt at 3rd level
Ooh, buddy.
every time he casts it.
And that's mean.
So a Warlock is like a sorcerer in that he knows spells and he can use whatever spells he knows whenever he wants. But he's limited to his spell slots, but every hour he can get those spell slots back.
So basically, Witch Bolt, and Witch Bolt's not a nice spell. Let me tell you, it's a 1d12. It's one of the nastiest hitting spells. It's a d12. So at 3rd level, at 5th level, you would be casting. Once you hit that creature the first time, 3d12, and every turn after, 3d12, 3d12, 3d12. That's why you can take out a pretty nasty creature quickly.
And to answer your question, Sarah, that's more of a DM decision.
What is it?
Technically speaking,
Oh,
short rest is basically not doing anything that would cause any kind of exertion.
right.
Whether or not riding a horse would be considered exertion for that individual would be up to the DM. But in my opinion, I would say, no, because you walk normally. I guess it depends on the DM, honestly, because
So the question,
walking, depending on how far you're walking, I don't know if that would necessarily be a short rest for someone.
yeah. Well, here's the question: do they have to? When Antonio was talking about the short rest that the Warlock gets his spell back, do they have to stay still for the whole hour, like a catnap on the ground, or could it be while walking or riding on a horse or wagon? And Antonio explained that part. And it is a DM thing. I agree. More than likely, I would probably, the wagon thing I would allow simply because they're probably just sitting in the back of the wagon as long as they're not driving it because their concentration is basically on riding. Now, here's the neat thing. And this is actually, I've seen this. People can actually sleep while riding a horse. It's the weirdest thing. And, so I would say as long as they're riding the horse and not having to exert themselves by jumping something or being chased or something, I'd go with that. The walking, because you're manually having to do it and you are exerting energy of your own, you're not really resting if you're exerting energy. On a horse, you may be resting. On a wagon, you're resting. But walking, I probably wouldn't allow it. Some other DMs might, but that's just my opinion. So what other things are cool about the Warlock? That's different?
The other thing that is very popular and why some people will play a sorcerer and then dip into Warlock is because they have separate spell lists.
Oh, talk to them about that. Yeah.
No matter what. So let's say you were playing a bard,
right,
a sorcerer, or a wizard, or some other spell casting class. Normally, when you start to mix those classes, so if you were to be a sorcerer and a bard multi-class, those would actually share spell slots. They don't get separate spells, like the amount of like casting.
Right.
You have slots. X amount of spell slots.
Right.
Which is in the book. I don't know exactly.
It's right back in. It's the multi.
There's a part that talks about multi-classing, and there's a chart that shows for spellcasters. And he even explains, if you're a half caster. So half casters are individuals who get magic later, but can't always cast. That don't cast up to 9th level. An example of this is a paladin and ranger, an artificer. They are half casters because yes, they can cast spells, but it is not the main focus of their class. Whereas a sorcerer, wizard, bard, it's a main feature of their class. So
there it is.
Like with the multi-classing and that. So it says it in here too about the warlock not counting towards it. But you do like math and then you could add and then it shows you what to actually do. So you would count as this level of a spellcaster, and then that would be your spell slots per day. Now, if you're like a warlock, you would get, if you're second level sorcerer, you would get whatever the second level sorcerer stuff is, and then whatever the second level warlock stuff is. So you would be able to do both of those every day and all that. Druids would be similar to a cleric, bard. They're in the sense that that's how they do their magic. They are technically divine magic, but they prepare their spells like a wizard, like a cleric. They prepare their spells to answer the where do druids fit in.
And then, so that's really neat.
So you wouldn't have to worry about, if am I going to do my bard spells or my sorcerer spells? Well, am I going to do my this or that? There's no real decision in that because warlocks have pact magic. It's not technically arcane. It's not technically divine. It's pact magic. You get your magic from a magical entity that has bestowed magical abilities upon you.
There you go.
You don't have to worry about this multi-classing spellcaster restriction that's put into it. And Eldritch Knight would fall underneath this multi-classing spellcaster because they are still a spellcaster, but they are not a half caster. They're not a full caster. I believe they describe them as a third caster.
Yeah, right.
So they're essentially a third of what a spellcaster would be is how they're trying to describe it.
Right. It's a fighter who can still pummel you, but now can hit you with magic too.
Yeah, so it's like it's an extraness to it.
Yeah, I'd say so. Here, let me hit you. Oh, by the way, I decided to throw a magic missile.
So yeah, that's part of the reason why you see a lot of people
with the warlock
sorcerer or warlock paladin or warlock bard.
That's nice. That's a nice little concept.
They keep their stuff separate. Their spellcasting ability is separate. It's its own thing.
Oh, let's talk about I'm talking about that since you brought up the paladin. So the paladin and the ranger, when they cast their magic, now they don't start out with magic. They grow into it. That's the way. That's what I like. At second level, they get it. So they grow into it. That's the way I like to put it. Their magic is just like a sorcerer's.
So yeah, they just know the spells, and then they can cast those spells based on that.
This is good information. I haven't learned much about multi-classing. And being a spellcaster in a few campaigns, this gives me Yeah. Now let me tell you about multi-classing. Nah, you know what? We're gonna get into multi-classing in a different. It's
It
its
should be its
own.
own thing.
It really is its own thing. But other than that, we wanted to talk about the multi-classing with spells because you don't gain both spell lists. All right, that's unless you're a warlock, which makes them very unique, like Antonio said. So now, I think that's about it with spellcasting. Oh, the bonus spells. Let's talk about bonus spells. I'll let Antonio, since Antonio's really the guru with that, I'm gonna let him kind of talk to you about how bonus spells work. First of all, I will tell you this: it has to say bonus spell, can be cast as a bonus spell, and they really do. A lot of people go, well, where does it say that? Well, right on the spell, in the spell description, it tells you bonus spell, and it lets you know that you can cast it as a bonus spell. Now, how that works, I'm gonna let him explain. While I get something else together just to kind of show you.
So that's another thing that's just about spellcasters in general. I know that someone's probably asking, well, can I cast 2 spells in a turn? The answer is yes, under certain circumstances. So some DMs that I've met and spoken with, so long as one's a bonus action and one's a regular action, they don't particularly care, right?
Right.
Technically, what it says is that in the book is that one has to be a cantrip and the other can be any level spell, but one of them has to be a cantrip. So in the case of like the sorcerer, which is why I talked about sorcery points earlier, was that, you know, a sorcerer has the ability to turn normal standard action spells like Firebolt. It costs 1 action to cast it. Mm-hmm. A sorcerer who also knows that also knows like another standard action spell. We'll say one that knows Fireball.
Fireball!
Right? Because everyone knows the spell Fireball. So
Fireball!
Fireball is a standard action spell. The sorcerer who can cast that can use his sorcery points to turn either Fireball or Firebolt into a bonus action spell. So then they could cast both spells the same turn,
which is really crazy.
And it depends on the DM on, you know, variations of that rule because, you know, in the end, the DM has the final word.
Right.
But most campaigns, one has to be a cantrip, one has to be a level spell.
Right.
And that's the only way to do a 2 spells in 1 turn. There is an exception to that rule.
There's always is.
So a paladin is probably the biggest example of this to exempt to this rule because a paladin can cast the spell Thunderous Smite. Thunderous Smite states that when you make your next melee attack, do da-da-da-da-da. They get to add, I think, 2d8 or 2d6 or something like that.
As a smite ability.
As a part of the attack action.
Right.
And because Thunderous Smite is a bonus action, a paladin can then, when they hit, because it's by choice, after they hit, they can choose to smite, which is their normal 2d8, you know, unless it's a fiend or undead, then it adds another d8.
Oh, a whole different ball wax.
When they hit, that particular paladin could potentially, let's say they're using a longsword. 1d8. He hits, he's going to do the 1d8 for the longsword, then he does smite, 2d8. But he had already cast Thunderous Smite, which I think is another 2d8.
5d8.
So he would technically be doing 5d8 because of Thunderous Smite, and his weapon.
That is nasty. Now I'm off camera because I wanted him to finish up, but I want to show you something that's really. These are the spell books, the spell codexes that I've shown you from Dragon. I'm sorry.
It's 2d6 for Thunderous.
2d6. So you would roll 3d8 plus 2d6. Now that's whole lot plus whatever their damage modifier is.
Yeah.
So that's a whole lot of damage right there. Hey, paladins, remember this combo when you run into that mean creature that you got to get rid of, okay? So spell codexes. I have a few of these. I brought the purple one, of course, because, you know, it's by Dragon Shield. They have them here at the Collective. I bought this. I wanted to bring it because since we're talking about magic, this is a neat little way to keep all your magic together. So I'm first level. I'm a first level character. Look, he has a little dry erase, so I'm actually going to fill this out so that you can kind of see. So here we go. My spell attack bonus is going to be because I have a +4. I have a very high intelligence. I have a +6. My spell DC is going to be 8, 10, 14. Oh, no, go ahead. Thank you. And then my spells. Okay. I am going to have my total number of spells for first level are 2. So I get 2 spells. Now here goes my spell book. I have Ray of Frost and Blade Ward. These 2 are my cantrips. My first level spells, which I get 2 of, I have Magic Missile and Magic Mage Armor. The reason I didn't take the Bolt spell, the Witch Bolt, is because Mage Armor is neat. Magic users don't wear armor. Okay, when I sit there and use Mage Armor on myself, because that's what I would use it on. 1, it lasts for 8 hours. So outside of the dungeon, I'm going to cast this. Before I go into combat, I'm going to cast a spell on myself. Okay? And it's going to basically make my base armor class a 13 automatically, plus my dexterity. Equal Mage Armor equals squishy spellcaster's best friend. Yes. So now my armor class, instead of being 10 plus, let's say I'm very fast, I have a +3. I have a 16 dex. Instead of it being 13, because of Mage Armor, my base is 13, so now I'm at 16. That makes a big difference. Okay, that's a big difference. And then Magic Missile, well, that's my favorite because, it automatically hits. So here they are. And then I like this book. Oh, let me come back up there again. These books are awesome because now what happens is, as I use my spells, I just mark them in here. Okay, so I use my Mage Armor, right? And then here it has active spells and miscellaneous. So down here, I'm going to put Mage Armor. Okay, Mage Armor there. And then I cast my Magic Missile in there. Now I'm done for the day. I'm done with my spells. And I have their descriptions right here. Another neat thing about this is if I flip to the back, it's got a little place that I can make notes. Okay, I can make notes back there as to what's going on. So I like these books. They're really nice. They come in different colors. I think there's red, white, blue, green, black, purple. Red, white, blue, green, black, and purple. I think there's 6 colors. So just wanted to throw those out at you. They're by Dragon Shield. Great, real good quality. And they're good quality. The spell cards are great because they fit right in there really nice. They have the descriptions on them. And let me tell you, remember the character sheets, the character folios. That's another great way of keeping your spell cards intact. Oh, and by the way, it does come with a dry erase marker. And the dry erase marker is just right here. Fits right in here. You just put it right there. Boom. Right in the middle of the book. Look at that. Magnetic clasp. Done. So that's really neat. So anyway, I hope that this kind of helped out with the magic. A couple people have been asking about it. And yes, as you can see, it's not as simple as just reading things. But the wonderful part is make sure you read through your character class and you find out all the neat little nuances that come available to you as you go up in levels. All right. So I think that I'm going to call, that's about it. I think that we've got everything. Antonio had to run off. He has to do some work, but I appreciate his coming. Antonio, thank you. And so from Antonio and myself and John's Dungeon Corner right here at the Collective. Oh, don't forget, restock of a lot of things. I like to say, may the road rise up to meet your feet, and may all your adventures always be successful. So you guys, be safe out there. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay hydrated, and I will see you next Friday here at John's Dungeon Corner at the Collective. Take care. And Antonio, thank you for coming. I appreciate you.